Well, good day, everyone. This is the QCast. It is the 10th of February, 2017. I want to share with you some of the headlines that should be the most troubling headlines in the world, especially to those who are believers or anybody that's got a common sense of decency. We've undergone revelations from WikiLeaks in the million plus, but one of the most troubling issues that I see coming on worldwide is cannibalism. I started on talk radio almost 23 years ago as a talk show host, and then moving on to the guest and being on various shows all over the country. And I made a statement almost 23 years ago that it was either 22 or 23 years ago that I said I felt like I received this, that as soon as the cannibalism became mainstream news across the world and in the headlines, I felt the Lord said, know this, that is the start of the Great Tribulation. Now, there's people that will argue that there is no Great Tribulation, that we're not in it. They'll argue about everything. They'll argue with themselves about the smallest bit of minutia. By the way, I think I must be dealing with people who will swallow camels. I should go put up a website called camelswallowers.com, because no matter what you say, contention, strife, and just downright denial overwhelm the day. Cannibalism is taking place on so many levels, but on a micronutrient basis. You remember all the stories that people were, and all of the news articles about 2 years ago about aborted baby parts being placed into different flavor enhancers? Let me tell you a quick story. And as usual, for those of you that can receive this, take it to the Lord in prayer who are believers. For those of you in the world of black operations, you'll know this to be true. A multi-star general, 3 of them, told me, and they asked me this question, Steve, do you know what's going on really with the chemtrails? And obviously I knew about geoengineering, and obviously those of you who have listened to me on talk radio all these years know I've been screaming about chemtrails. Even some of my critics have to say that, you were the first one to bring it to the public's attention. Now, my goal has never been to scare anybody, has never been to, quote, sell fear, to basically sell a book, sell this, sell that. But my goal has been to basically tell people ahead of time what's coming so they could prepare. Obviously, as one of the founders of the survival industry, preparation was, I termed it life assurance. How many of you have life insurance policies? How many have car insurance policies, medical insurance policies, every kind of policy you can have, business interruption policies? If you're in business, you got to have that. But the thing is, very few people consider life assurance policies. As we're going into February next week, well, obviously it'll be the 15th. Today is the 10th. There are record storms across the world. There are cold records being set throughout the world, especially Europe. Then we've got Australia hitting 49.5 degrees centigrade today. That's hot. We've got a reversal of pretty much everything that's up is down and everything that's down is up. We've got the Arctic thawing at a phenomenal speed. Let me tell you why I think the Arctic is thawing at a phenomenal speed. When you're dealing with HAARP, the High Alaskan Altitude Research Project, U.S. Patent 4686605, you're dealing with an ionospheric heater. Those of you who have been on Dane Wigington's geoengineeringwatch.org will see, and you can just type in his search engine and come up with all the weather modification information that's out there. One of the things that I think is fascinating is years ago, and I think it was 15 years ago, just for the record, to set the record straight, I'll do this so you can see it. There you go. Weather Wars and Unnatural Disasters by yours truly. This was something I was trying to get people to understand. Sure, there's people that understand black physics and esoteric physics, but what most people don't understand, going back to what the general said, the chemtrails are to change the very atmosphere. I coined a term called terraforming, not terra. I should be a little more clear in my enunciation. Terror, Terror forming. They told me that because of the quote-unquote giants, and by the way, the term long walkers, which I wrote the book called Long Walkers, actually I have a screenplay too, been talking to a couple guys, pretty well known, in Hollywood to try and get that thing brought to the big screen. And those of you who have read that book know it's kind of an exciting book, but most of it is based on fact. But the other thing they talked about was a genetic manipulation of food. A lot of you remember the old series V, as in Victor. The aliens come, they come bringing gifts. The only thing is that what they require is humans on the lunch table. You cannot escape the fact, whether you're dealing with vampirism, you're dealing with cannibalism, you're dealing with all of the, quote, contempt for human beings, contempt for human bodies, contempt for human mind, that somebody really doesn't like us. So now that we're dealing with the chemtrails and people are reporting to me daily, sometimes probably in a given week, at least 20 to 30 emails out of the hundreds and hundreds I get a day, and I can't possibly respond, I'm sorry, but I just can't do it anymore. The chemtrails are altering the atmosphere. They're also poisoning the soil, and the dementia, onset dementia, Parkinson's disease are all basically heavy metal related. Now look, again, all you can do is go and see the composition of the chemtrails. But what most people don't understand is weather wars and unnatural disasters are happening right and left. And the last QCast I did the other day, even in the last week since we did this QCast, or actually I did it, the Fox News is carrying the true amount of radiation as being 5,300 sieverts, 5,300. That's 5,300. Remember that 5 is lethal. 5 sieverts. In Bozeman, Montana today, I just took our background radiation. We were at 0.14. I've gotten some calls from people around the world that are noticing a higher radiation level. So ask yourself this. If you are seeing ionospheric heaters, imagine microwaving the ice in the Arctic. Imagine that China is using weather modification, weather warfare, the United States is using it, Russia's using it, and who else is using it? What happens when all of those converging beam angles, whether they're lasers, whether they're any form of electromagnetic radiation projection, what happens when they all start to reverberate? Well, you get an echo chamber from hell, but you get a lot of melting of the ice. Most people have no clue of how much melting is going on in the Arctic, obviously the North Polar region, and that it's warmer there than it's ever been, according to contemporary in the last 200 to 300 years. So why am I bringing up all this? Because again, as you watch the headlines, whether they're on Drudge, and obviously that's probably the go-to place first thing in the morning for 25 million people, minimum, you're seeing more and more pronouncements about weird weather, flooding, forest fires, strange events, anomalous things in the sky, all of the different cloud formations, the opening circles in the sky. And for the record, electrogravitic flying machines like the TR-3B, Tango Romeo 3 Bravo, Tango Romeo 4 Bravo, and all the derivations of the triangular spaceships that can jump space, they can basically generate, if you will, a cloud field around them. So not only can they mask, like i.e. go invisible, they can create an ionizing field that basically produces the clouds. And that's why you see all the weird clouds. Not everything is obviously a mass ship. But I want to get back to the cannibalism because this is really deleterious to all of our lifestyles. The general, 2 of them, and then another one later said they're genetically altering the human appetite center to basically ready not only us, but others to consume human flesh. Now, you got to know when there is I believe it's the Fox channel, is coming out with a cannibal couple, and it's supposed to be a comedy. Notice how they're absolutely broaching the subject of cannibalism. That's just okay. And then remember that a couple of the Muslim mullahs said that their reading of all the different Islamic writings teach that, it's okay to eat your enemy. I guess that gives new word meaning to eat your heart out. The thing that is most provocative to me and most unsettling to me is how many people sit back and say nothing. How many people don't even consider that some of their favorite soft drinks are, how should we say this, baby formula. And when I say that, I mean formulas made of babies. So the appetite in your brain, and this is something interesting. When I brought out Kuru, during the days when the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD, was out there, brought up the fact of prions, some people pronounce them prions, crystalline structures that destroy organic material. Most people couldn't handle that. And it was tracked all the way back to the jungles of New Guinea. And when the headhunters, who are also cannibals, would eat their vanquished foes, they started to get a spongiform encephalopathy. Basically meant that their brains were getting eaten by a crystalline structure, kind of like the Andromeda strain for the brain. What is problematic is that when you're thinking about the times that lie ahead of us, the disconnect between all of the climatic events taking place, all of the genetic engineering events taking place, and all of the other, I'd say, strange phenomenon and anomalies, still the average people in America, even I would call them the clued-in ones, don't realize how this is adversely going to affect their lifestyle in such a way that it's not just the cannibalism and the atmosphere being changed, but you'll be changing by whatever they decide to feed you, and it will be a super Soylent Green. For those of you that don't know what Soylent Green is, please go on the internet and look at Soylent Green. Obviously, it was with Charlton Heston and Edward G. Robinson. I forget who the other actors are, but they basically turned people into food wafers, these little green, ugly-looking food wafers. Will we come to the point where we are hunted by autonomous entities, AI, robots? And some of you probably are unfamiliar with this, but even DARPA had a design for robots that the fuel for the robots with human dead cadavers. And oh, by the way, they just blast away and feast away. In other words, they were, if you will, little metabolic monsters. And some weren't so little, but 4 to 6 feet or higher. And this is what's happening now, ladies and gentlemen. We're in a time period unlike any other. And there's never been a time like this. Oh, and I write about mythology. I write about giants. I write about aliens. And for the record, the absolute disconnect becomes worse. It isn't getting better. I can tell by just something as simple as the long-term food storage companies. I talk to people all over the country. I used to be into that big time. And they can't believe it, that everything has almost stalled out. Meanwhile, we've got Russia getting ready for war. Vladimir Putin announcing tell his Air Force to be on immediate standby. We've got the Chinese in the islands off of Japan challenging our P3, P4, P5, our submarine hunting airplanes. We've got a total unfolding situation, and I'll call it what it is. There are others who have written the book, Chittum, The Coming Civil War. I think it was the title of Thomas Chittum's book. There's other people out there warning about it. And I remember, too, writing about it, talking about it, and people said, that will never happen. Well, never is a long time. Now I want to bring you up to speed on something. I try, and somebody says, why aren't you just sticking with one subject? Because I got to cover as much territory. In this case, it's Friday, so I've got to cover a week's worth of news, and I try and get on here every other day, but there are things that happen, I can't do it. But the issue that is really fundamentally presenting itself before us is the fact that things are dehumanizing. They're becoming more dehumanized daily. If you can't see that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has basically set the precedent, and by the way, they're not known as the conservative caucus. When you've got dim-witted senators making the statement that President Bush is still president, i.e. Nancy Pelosi, or Maxine Waters making the horrific statement she's making, and people still voting him in to office, you got to ask yourself, okay, how can this be? Well, the answer is simply this: because we tolerate it. When you get the stories that are coming out of Washington, and they become more perverse, more disgusting, and more damaging, and people in the mainstream media still won't cover it because they're too concerned with the cover-up and not the uncovering. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a supernatural war, and you ain't seen nothing yet. The desire to destroy all humanity didn't start with some guy from MIT, Caltech, or any of the leading bio weapons laboratories. It started with the Prince of Darkness. And as darkness has settled across the land, I submit to you, look at the change. Look at the change. We are so identity challenged and gender challenged. I actually had to come up with a new word for the Boy Scouts. Now I have to call them gender scouts, because Boy Scouts is obviously too detrimental to the contemporary society of meowification taking place. I can't sing it. I don't want to bore you or even attempt to hit the right pitch. But if you remember the Meow Mix commercial, meow, 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 that seems to be the order of the day. When you have the castrata, look it up, la castrata, parading around as dilettantes, and look up that word too, and you've got the confusion, you've got gender confusion. Meanwhile, you've got the women protesting this, that, and the other thing, while women are being caned to death, while they're being stoned to death, while they're being burned to death, while they're being drowned to death, while they're being beheaded, while they're being raped until their insides are on the outside. See, this isn't pleasant. And please, don't turn into this broadcast to expect, Uncle George's Good Time Hour, because Uncle George's Good Time Hour no longer exists. I want to recommend to you something that this is really critical for today's broadcast. Holly Deo wrote, I'm just trying to get used to how to present this. Holly Deo wrote the book Dare to Prepare. And what most people don't understand is I get emails day in and day out. It's available on stevequayle.com along with Weather Wars, and I think we got them packaged together for $55, and they're normally $75. But when you're asking me how to prepare, I told Holly, I said, Holly, this is the best title because people have to dare. You literally almost have to dare them to prepare. Sorry about that. There we go. You have to basically challenge people to operate in their best interest because they simply don't want to. This is a magnificent book. I used to sell Paladin books. I used to sell preparedness books. I had a really pretty big company that sold everything preparedness called Security and Survival Products. And then that changed into Safe Trek, and Safe Trek meaning Safe Journey. And in Holly's magnificent book, and this is truly, listen, this is not flattery. If you ask me what the best book in the world is to how do you go about preparing, you might be interested to know that I think she's up to about, I'm looking down at the table of contents right now, 568 pages. I stand corrected, 627 pages. And it's one of the most complete books. Nothing exists like it. Congratulations, Holly. And I've always said this. If you can go to one source that covers everything, then go to that source. It doesn't mean she's the last word, but I think she's devoted 20 years, maybe 15 years at least, of her life to this. And now listen, here's some of the chapters. I'm going to read, I'm going to look away. Getting started. That's the number one question I get a day on my website. What do I do? I'm scared now. Well, you've got to basically get your fear under control and you got to get your body in motion. Chapter 2, urban survival. Urban survival is totally different than wilderness survival. Storing short-term and then emergency water treatment. Most people don't know how to treat their water and don't know how to filter water, especially, when the power goes out. Now, I remember years ago, again, when I went on talk radio 23 years ago, I said the two most important items in the days ahead will be potable water, drinkable water, and food that's edible food. And I remember making the statement, some of you who have listened to me all these years will know this. I said, you'll be drinking water in the days that come that normally you'd only walk through, and you'll have to filter it. One of the things that I've been most concerned about, whether it's the the New Madrid fault going off, or the Cumbre Vieja hitting the East Coast, or all the different faults in California, running up off the coast of Oregon, the Juan de Fuca plate, all of the things that we've seen. When it happens, my guess is it's going to be very unusual where the big one happens. It's not going to be where they expected it. But getting back to Dare to Prepare. Dare to Prepare, water treatment on a big scale, water collection and storage, finding survival water, and Holly's laying it out. Water, water, water. And the rhyme of the ancient mariners stated, water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink, okay? And I'll add a little statement. I'm obviously paraphrasing this. Cadavers, 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 and everywhere the bodies stink. Food, what and how much to store. This is really critical because I'll tell you this, as one of the larger food producers in the United States during the years leading up to Y2K and 2 years after, food storage is based on empty calories, based on, let's say, very little nutrition. So you've got to make sure that you get non-GMO food, that you get organic food, and that you get, when you're getting poultry and beef, hormone-free beef and poultry. Because just as you and I, we humans are being genetically altered by what we eat, what we breathe, what we drink, we are seeing the same thing happening to animals. So while not everyone can afford to eat organically, everyone can grow their own sprouts. Sprouts, by the way, are way more nutritional than the lettuce. Or the leafing part of what we're growing, radish sprouts. You can sprout anything. Go on the internet and find sprouting. But Holly covers this too, taking care of your investment. She did something that most people don't know what to do or how to do it. She gives the code and how to read the expiration dates. Shelf lives of everything. That's probably one of the most important charts in this book. And by the way, this special, again, is $55 for both books. And the reason why Weather Wars is so critical, unless you understand the technological war that's being waged by one nation against another nation, and their intercrossing and reflecting beam angles or frequencies, and everything's like a giant echo chamber, but it doesn't play out well no matter who's initiating it. You won't understand how the growing seasons are not only being artificially messed with, but with all the volcanism and the ash in the upper atmosphere, the pH of the ocean changing because there's so much sulfur dioxide going to the water. So, general supplies, first aid supplies, the real shelf life of medications, shelf lives of non-foods, building a basic underground storage, building a hand pump, making colloidal silver, soap making. That's, most people don't know how to do that. Candle making, fire building. I mean, we're talking 36 chapters at least. Making charcoal, making biodiesel fuel, composting, growing food. I mean, generators, power, cooking without power, solar cooking, communications. The wonder of Clorox, shower without power, trashy talk. What do you do with your trash? What do you do if someone dies? I'm not saying humans are trash, but you've got to get rid of the cadavers. Pet preparedness. One of the tragedies about pet preparedness is people are storing a lot of really garbage dog food. And you can go on the web and see the unsafe dog food. It's critical that you do that. Well, how do you deal, okay? What do you do with all of the different things you're going to have to deal with? Whether your pet gets fleas, whether it gets ticks, ear mites, all the different stuff that pets are subject to. Firearms. Terrorism, venturing into the unthinkable, buying a gas mask and filter, biowarfare decontamination, sheltering in place, nuclear emergencies, what to expect. If anybody doesn't think that we're going to have an issue with everybody and their dog launching missiles in the last, 30 days, maybe 60 days, and all the threats, counter threats, and all the ramifications and different issues that you're going to have to deal with, it's very important. This is chapter 44. Chapter 45, shelter during nuclear emergencies. Russia and China can pretty much shelter the majority of their populations. Russia can do half. I think China can do a third. The United States has nada, niet. We have no civil defense. You're on your own. Remember what I said, though, life assurance. Water and food in nuclear emergencies. First aid in nuclear emergencies, electromagnetic pulse. That's what Gary Haven was warning about in his movie Amerigeddon. Preparing for earthquakes, preparing for drought and water shortage, preparing for heat waves and heat emergencies, fires, floods, each one of these is a different chapter. Preparing for hurricanes, preparing for meteor and asteroid strikes, preparing for tsunamis. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we go all the way up to chapter 69, and she stops it with dealing with stress and hope and encouragement. So this is, again, I'm going to hold it up, and maybe I'll get my screen. This is new for me for doing this, so my apologies. There we go. That's better. I urge you to get the Dare to Prepare special. It will help answer all your questions. I don't think you can have a question here of how to prepare and not have it dealt with. Again, you can go on my website, stevequayle.com, go on Safe Trek Books up on the top right-hand side. This is on there, and then we've got the weather wars and unnatural disasters. And let me read something to you here. This is by Zbigniew Brzezinski. Talk about a globalist, trilateralist, and a guy that tells it like it is and what they want to do to the planet. Technology will make available to the leaders of major nations techniques for conducting secret warfare, of which only a bare minimum of security forces need to be appraised. Techniques of weather modification could be employed to produce prolonged periods of drought or storms. And then what was interesting is Sam Cohen, and he was one of the secretaries of defense, made the statement that they can basically produce any type of earthquake, hurricane, storm, flood, drought, you name it. And that's the weather warfare that's going on. And then we've got the Air Force, and this is all in this book, weather modification, Air University of the U.S. Air Force. So I get this. I don't believe that's really real. Well, no offense. Stay stupid and die. Or learn that maybe your feelings are different than empirical facts. How about this? Weather modifications offers the war fighter a wide range of possibility options to defeat or to coerce an adversary in the United States. Weather modification will likely become a part of national security policy with both domestic and international applications. Bingo! Our government will pursue such a policy depending on its interests at various levels. So everybody, if you were to restate that, you'd simply say that everybody is going to do that. Well, every nation is going to be making war against every nation. So I want to thank you for tuning in. But the name of the book is Dare to Prepare by Holly Dale. And with my book, Weather Wars and Unnatural Disasters, $55, you're saving $20. And I think you'll find that putting these two books together, one will show you how advanced the weather warfare is. So when you say, well, you don't believe it, you may not listen to this broadcast now, but I encourage you to download it, because when your stomach growls longer or harder than your denial or the voice of denial, then maybe you'll think that, maybe I should have paid attention to all these guys. Goodbye. God bless you. Until the next QCast.